Hello everyone, and after a long, hot, passionate summer, welcome to the second series of Reservoir Red Dogs.
That's right, we're back. Matt is back from the Edinburgh Festival. I went to see a show, and I've got to tell you, I laughed so hard, I almost gave myself a hernia. And that's a common injury for footballers. Anyway, how long have you had off? And this is all you can come up with. Anyway, enough of tubs. I've been busy too, writing a film about two space dogs called Tiddles and Wiggler. It's a heartwarming, waggy tale of friendship, love and atrocities of fictional space war. Rubbish. Absolute nonsense.
Thanks, Paul. We can't wait to see the show once it's ready. If you need any actors, I'll be happy to perform in it.
Oh, is it still going? No, Matt. It's a one-man play in which I, Paul McGregor, will play all three characters, Tiddles, Wiggler, and the planet Zyrtec. The first planet discovered in our solar system made entirely of antihistamine. Wow. Any tears shed on that planet are as a result of raw emotion and not the result of dust or animal allergies.
Brilliant. We'll look out for that soon at the Angel Row Odeon. Back in the real world, we are delighted to be joined by a Forest legend, a man who spent 2 spells at Forest and was the engine of that brilliant Paul Hart side. He made 168 appearances for the Reds in total and is now known as the star of Sky's championship coverage. It's David Prutton. David,
hello,
welcome
gents.
to the show.
No, pleasure to be here,
Hey,
and
mate.
especially after that introduction, it was good. The Zyrtec thing was very funny.
It's an honour to have you here. We've wanted to have you on for a while, and a very popular choice on social media when we announced that you were coming on.
Well, that's always good. As I said, I listened to a couple of them over the last couple of days and really enjoyed it. I mean, I love a good podcast. I spend a lot of time in the car now, so that's probably why I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts instead of music.
So just on podcast, are there any others that you would recommend to Reservoir Red Dog listeners?
Don't mention rock and roll football. Don't mention it.
I've never heard of it.
No, I haven't.
What's
either.
it on?
I don't know.
No,
Who
I
said
don't know.
that?
Yeah, there's a good music one, Stage Left podcast.
Yeah, I've followed those guys.
It was quite good.
Yeah.
There's an Alec Baldwin one, which is
Oh, wow.
mental.
Wow.
Just interviewing everybody from actors all the way up to politicians. So this will fit nicely in between
In that canon.
what his ballpark is.
I mean, we do talk about other things other than football, don't we? I mean, this is, I suppose, quite an interesting start. But Paul and I
Well, we do
shared
always
some
say
time.
that we should actually do this in the pub. The 2 hours in the pub after the podcast are always the more revealing.
They are, but that's because people can't. Well, let's see, David. By all means, tell us all your darkest
Can you imagine?
secrets. Yeah, that ends today.
Deathly silence from you two for an hour.
But one thing that really stayed with me, and obviously we've talked about a lot of stuff, and we saw each other over the summer, was you saying, Paul, that when you finished playing, you basically locked yourself in a room and read philosophy for a year.
No, that's how conceited does that sound? It wasn't just philosophy.
It was far broader than that.
World politics.
Economics.
Yeah. Quantum physics. No, but I was very aware how ill-educated I was and how I'd, as a footballer, and how there was a part of my brain that was just hungry to kind of know more about stuff. And being in a band as well, I think I said before on this that like my favourite writer at the time in terms of lyrics was Richie Edwards from the Manics. And they were incredibly intelligent lyrics and just threw out quotes and authors and all kinds of stuff. References, from all over the place. So I literally sat there, wrote down loads of references, and there was actually in an old fanzine I found a list of 100 books Richie Edwards recommends, and with my couple of £1,000 I retired on, went to Waterstones, and not just those, but then I must have spent £3,000, £4,000 on
Of course
books.
you did, because you went to Waterstones, mate. You should have gone to like a second-hand bookshop
I
on
didn't
Mansfield
know. I was a
Road.
footballer. What do I know? Bookshop. So that's what I did, and that's what I did. I wrote lyrics and read, and didn't move out with mum and dad's. It was a breakdown of sorts, if I'm honest.
And I presume reading that type of stuff inspired you further on, because it's funny when you listen to like Dylan stuff, and as he kind of pulls out, I don't know, poets and authors from years gone by, like Verlaine's and people like that. It's funny that the popular stuff is the popular stuff, and it's the popular stuff because it's really good and it makes you think, and it spurs you on. And like you say, with the music side of it and knowing your interest in music, and I've always loved looking at lyrics, getting CDs back in the day and flicking through, oh, that means that, I wonder what that means and all that. Because it's the music that makes you feel something, and it's the lyrics that make you think. And I've always enjoyed trying to marry the two up together.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of bands I've been in where even you'll pour your heart out over a set of lyrics and think, these are, I've nailed this, I've got this right. and the band members 4 or 5 years down the line are singing the wrong lines. What does that even mean? Like I wrote a track for Ulterior called Locus of Control, and our guitarist thought it was the locust of control. I was like, mate, what's a locust of control? And he was like, I don't know, just sort of like imagine a big, like almost like a spaceship locust that controls everything. I was like, what do you think I am? What do you think I'm writing about here?
Was he on drugs?
No.
So that film
Not that I
about
know of.
this sort of 2 films of the dog set in space actually has started to make a lot of sense.
Well, if we introduce a locust of control, I've got a soundtrack for us straight away.
It's like the spiders from Mars, isn't it?
And Dave, you mentioned music there. You've got a reputation as being is a muso the right word, or does that make it sound a bit too pretentious?
Probably too pretentious. I've always just enjoyed...
More pretentious than reading philosophy for 3 years.
Exactly. So if we start with that, then everything's less pretentious. But it's always been a major kind of touchstone in my life. That it's going back to probably the first time I ever got in touch with you via a text. Sorry for that picture.
That's all right.
Hopefully we're friends again now. I was listening to the show you were doing with John Richardson and mentioned something silly about the length of an Oasis song on Be Here Now, and I just thought it was so funny. But it was one of those where I instantly got what you meant, and it just kind of fit into the music that I liked. And as you grow up, the different music and bands that mean something to you, and they always have done, and it's great the way it's developed. I mean, muso's a bit. I've always liked stuff like the Beatles and the Stones and Led Zeppelin, and obviously you come away from what a traditional dressing room soundtrack would be, and it isn't Led Zeppelin and the Stones. It's all very relevant and crap.
Mind you, ours was pretty good.
Who was in charge of it when you were there? You.
There was a bit of a clash of everything, because you had the old school, and then like with Piercy and all that lot, and then when Kev Campbell came and Bart was around and all those boys, obviously all those lads are like they're bringing in Biggie and NWA and all this sort of stuff, and then obviously I'm listening to all that stuff anyway, but I also like old school punk, and then there's me just going, have you heard the Verve, have you heard Oasis, so you had this great clash in the middle, which was brilliant, because you would then get people like Stuart Pearce listen to Straight Outta Compton before a game, and I just used to sit there and love it. Great.
But when you talk to Stuart about music, I mean, he loves football, obviously, doesn't he? But you talk to him about music, he looks at you and his eyes light up. I was chatting to him when we were at the Newcastle game, and because he was out in Russia covering the World Cup, and he said he managed to go and see Guns N' Roses. I think he was in Red Square.
They're meant to be brilliant.
But he's back actually
way,
singing properly now, isn't he, Axl Rose? And because it's obviously you need to, if you're going to watch Guns N' Roses, Slash has got to be on stage throwing all kinds of shapes, doesn't he?
So were you ever tempted to be in a band then, David?
No, because I couldn't
you play
sing.
anything?
No. I've like every man of my age, I've got a guitar, which I'm terrible at playing. A friend of mine, a very, very close friend of mine, is a very talented singer, songwriter, musician, lives over in California now. And it's funny because he's a Wednesday fan, so he had a passing kind of passion to watch Forest when I was there. And I'll have to get a picture of him, because he's at one stage he was the spitting image of you.
Lucky fella.
Same colourings and everything. And there was more than one occasion when he was at the Forest game, and people had sidled up to him. And, "You're right," and he's like, "Yeah."
Really?
Yeah. No, seriously. Like, how's things going? Yeah, fine. What are you here for then? Just watching me, mate. Who's your mate? And then, all right. And then, well, all the best with it, Mac. It's like,
brilliant.
That's
so cool.
Full doppelganger.
People keep
Love it.
calling me Paul.
Would I know him?
McCartney.
Not at all. No. Yeah, McCartney. Yeah.
So they were. I'm just trying to think of when you were at Forest, Dave. In terms of that dressing room you were in, what was the sort of? I don't want this whole thing to be about music, but
But let's.
what music? Who was in charge of the music when you were there?
It would have been Marlon, I think. Chris Bat Williams was always. You know what Bart's personality's like.
Yeah.
Christ, dominates the dressing room, doesn't he? Aaron coming a mile off, and he was always doing his thing. Jim Brennan latterly,
Legend.
but it'd be like stuff. I think he literally brought over from Canada with him like Nickelback, and who on earth is this?
Rooster.
Yeah, Rooster. Yeah, and so he'd love a bit of that. He'd be rocking out just on his own, and it was good because it was quite eclectic, and it was one of those where I think everyone would get a bash at a song, and then it'd probably end up being Marlon putting something horrendous on.
But they're always the worst mixtapes when everyone has a say.
Yeah, because I mean,
It's utter nonsense.
Because the dynamic of it just is completely out of kilter.
No one's thought about it.
Like you'd come
You're
running
up,
out
you're
to
down.
like Lady in Red. Come on, lad! What? Okay, start it down a couple of notches.
Yeah.
So you'd signed for Forest in 98?
98, yep.
Under Dave Bassett
Yes.
as a schoolboy, or associate schoolboy,
Yeah.
whatever the thing was.
Came over with my mum and dad, all suited and ill-fitting, booted, and did the whole thing, and then did my GCSEs, and then joined.
At the club?
No. I finished them at school in Hull,
Yeah.
and then came in that summer. So it must have been
20
May,
years ago.
June, and then we started 1st of July. I think that rings a bell.
And did you have other options, or was Forest like your only...
Forest was the only one. I'd been to the School of Excellence, as they used to be called, at Hull City, which at that time was like a dusty old gym around the back of Boothby Park. But I'd been playing for the 17s and 19s my last year at school. It was never a case of having to choose between several different options. It was just Forest had shown an interest, and I signed. And it all, when I look back at it all seems fairly, without sounding too arrogant. I sound a little bit arrogant, but it all seemed fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
Like I loved school. I played rugby at school. I had to stop playing rugby. I was still playing Sunday League. Then I had to play for Forest on a Saturday mornings. And then they asked me to sign. They offered me YTS to 17 and then a 3-year pro contract.
That's
which
good.
I think it's even more so nowadays when you hear like kids getting 6 months and all that type of stuff. As modest as that investment was, it was still an investment in you to be hopefully professional football at some stage within that 3 years.
And did it come into Forest? Because every player who comes to Forest comes with a different experience, with different expectations. Did it feel like a dazzling place to come?
Yeah.
This recently Premier League club.
I knew exactly what Forest was. I knew exactly the size of what it was. Watching them in the cup final, the players that you then walked in and saw on a day-to-day basis were players that I knew of and had heard of, and it was because of the recent history of it being in the Premier League and how well they'd done in the Premier League as well. There was no sense of its signing for a club that was anything other than massive. There was no doubt about the size and the magnitude of the club. And again, I mean, obviously the shadow of Brian Clough is long and vast, and as it absolutely should be. And to know that you were associated with somewhere which was associated with great men like him was just an absolute honour.
And in terms of your day-to-day duties, obviously as a young lad coming to a football club, you're there to play football. But back then, did you have to clean people's boots and things like that?
We had to do boots. We had to clean the dressing rooms every day. Do that over the course of the season. We had to do. I remember my old man driving me over on Boxing Day for a game where there was only because our generation there was a lot of Scottish lads, a lot of Irish lads, and there wasn't too many English lads. So all those lads got a fair portion of time off, 2 weeks or whatever it was, and so the localish lads coming from Hull came in Boxing Day.
I was the same.
New Year's Day as well.
Boxing Day and New Year's
I was the
Day.
same. Me, Vance Warner, Neil Glasser, Lee Marshall were the only local
On
lads.
the doorstep,
So the
yeah.
out of town lads had gone. So we used to work the games.
Yeah.
So all the games over Boxing Day, and it was 4 of us.
When you say work the games, what, like the turnstiles and stuff, or what?
Hot dog van.
yeah, stewarding.
No, but,
What life?
but we had to. So there was always someone had to clean the dress rooms after the lads had turfed out. Someone had to help the kit man get the boots all sorted because he was on his own for 2 weeks trying to get stuff like that. And the ironic thing is, for the kit man, it's the busiest time of the year. So you've got like a ridiculous amount of games in the space of 2 weeks, and his little army of minions have all gone. See ya. Have a good one. Bye. Well, I was in there the other week when we did the Newcastle game. The boot room smells exactly the same.
Yeah.
The kit man's room smells exactly the same. The corridors smell exactly the same. So as you go up, there'd be the first team one on the right, there'd be the reserve team one further up on the right, and the U team one across it. I mean, you look at where you got changed.
That's the murder in the dark room.
Jesus Christ!
Was Murder in the Dark still going when you were
But
there?
it was like a rite of passage, and you had another job as well. So excuse me, I was just looking after the footballs, and obviously nothing better than a brand new mitre football. It's fantastic. But the edge of that gets taken off by the fact that you've got to blow them up and deflate them every day,
Deflate them?
wash them down,
Why have you got to deflate them?
and then you get Mickey Adams come down after training. Who the has pumped these balls up? And I'm like, tell him I've died or something. That's,
Oh, you mean these 50 footballs I have to
Exactly.
do every day? Yeah.
And this one flat one or semi kind of a flat one that I found. Robert, where have you left it? I booted it near the river. Do I have to go and get it? Yes, you do. All right, and run. All right, bye.
Bye.
Utterly ridiculous.
See you soon.
But they were deflated, what, for storage purposes?
I don't know whether it maintained or elongated the life of the football. But
Poor life. Footballs live on average a lot longer these days.
It was just. Yeah, give him a fishing rod and he can live forever, can he? But it was, and then you look back on it now and you think, I wonder how many minutes of a week he spent farting around doing that.
And in terms of, when you're doing people's boots, were you assigned to specific players?
Yeah, I had, first year was Thierry Bonneler.
Wow, what a player. What a player.
He was quite funny, Thierry. There was one game he scored, I think it was when I'd got in the first team, he scored a worldie.
Yeah.
Like out the blue, you know what I mean? Blow up the Death Star type shot. Unbelievable.
Deflate the Death Star.
Deflate the Death Star very slow and wipe it down. And then the lads afterwards, I think Alan Rodgers leading the inquest. Amazing goal that too. Yeah, must be the best one you scored. No. Proper no. And everyone's going, really? We've seen you quite a lot. And I don't think you could do that again. No, it's not the best goal. Forget it, mate. But I did his and I did Richard Follett's, which I'd mentioned to you.
Yeah.
Because Foll must have got changed in your vicinity.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was. So come Christmas, you had to go in the home team dressing room, stand on the table and sing a song.
Oh, yeah.
And whoever, majority of the lads that did that pretty much got away with a bit of cash. I think I did as well, but it was only Foll that gave me some money, and Thierry was like a firm handshake. And like a rite of passage, like, you'll thank me for that one. No, give me 20 quid.
It was a phenomenal period to see so much young, great talent coming through. And you were my favourite player for years at Forest. The engine of it. But also, as well as the phenomenal effort and technical ability and everything else, the disciplinary record. Whenever I remember
Absolutely.
I remember the Watford one specifically. I remember being sat in the upper trend.
On the Twitter feed when we announced them, there was about 6 on their bounce.
Our favourite red card.
He did this, and then he did that. Disgrace.
Was it? Because I never really felt that you were a dirty player. But the record seems to say that I'm wrong.
It speaks for itself, doesn't it? It gets progressively. Well, actually, no, it started bad and it got slightly better, then it went really downhill when I went down south. But it was aggression. It was such a vague concept. It was always a big part of how I wanted to play football. Yeah. I love the physical side of it. There was another one at home against Sheffield United. It would have been Warnock's.
Sheffield, absolutely it was, yeah, and it was towards the end of that season.
And it was Paul Hart was in charge. And
that's right.
I think mine was just before our time. I must have just run out of steam and thought, I'm going to smash someone. And then took someone out and then argued with the ref about, I'd never been a foul. And he's like, come on. And then I went trotting off. I might have been second out. And then, so I'm sat there, head in hands, fuming in the home dressing room. And then I hear these studs clumping down the corridor. And then in comes Jack Lester. Oh, Christ, not you as well. And he went, yeah.
Oh.
So then
I remember that.
And then Paul's come in. I'm ready. I'll tell him exactly what I think. It was like, either him or me. Like, do or die. And he went, you're an idiot. What on earth are you doing? So, all right, good point. But he was, and he was never, it was never premeditated. It was never, hopefully, ridiculously nasty or anything that was anything other than being able to channel yourself in a way that should have been more productive. You talk about being in the kind of engine room. I really pride myself on getting about the pitch and being involved in as much as you possibly could do, giving the ball to the players that could really play. And that, as I saw, was my little niche, if you like.
You were superb. You went to Southampton in January 2003, which I was
where this is going to go.
Gutted about. But I will never forget. Now, and we have talked about this, because I told this story on TalkSport a couple of years ago. I mean, I have such a clear memory of this, but I'm willing to accept that I might be wrong. But I remember seeing you in the horn in hand.
Yes.
In a beanie hat. Playing pool against yourself.
Yeah. I can't deny that. I can't deny that. The Horn in Hand had a fantastic jukebox.
It was fun. Oh, it was so good.
And you go in there and, I don't know, like a bit of a div, chuck 10 quid in the jukebox, and then do that one with play it next. So
that's
for
right.
half an hour, someone's going, Jesus Christ.
Got a group of metalers in the
Yeah.
corner just waiting to put on Slayer.
Who wants to hear Hey Now again?
I do.
Just album tracks. Just to
I think that's what drew me in. Was like, Be Here Now on for the third time.
And yeah, I mean, it was a place that I enjoyed going out. I had mates around the time that I was here that were at uni in Nottingham. So
Great.
we had some great nights out. And even around here, being in Hockley, Tuesday nights would be Market Bar, which was great fun. When I talk about Kane in Marlon's music, we used to go in there, throw a few shapes. And that wasn't like Britpop or anything like that.
Yeah.
But for that time as well, you were out as young lads. It wasn't a case of... I mean, we never got that much attention anyway, but it wasn't a case of... I mean, someone's going to have a phone somewhere that's going to take a picture of something or record, or just something. We were young lads that got on really well in a dressing room, which, as you get further through your career, you realise that's not obvious. That's just because you're a group of fellas doing the same job around the same age. I mean, I've been in some dressing rooms where you're driving in the morning going, I can't stand 75% of the people in here because things aren't going well, or you just clash of personalities, or you
bullies.
But I mean, the other side of it is you get quite stubborn as you get older, and when you've seen, and that's not me saying I'm like this kind of bastion of standards or anything like that, because as you get older and your career goes in certain directions, you kind of behave and apply yourself accordingly, which is, to a certain extent, is not necessarily the right thing. But when you're in a place like we were, with a good mixture of older lads as well, that really gelled with the younger lads, it was great, really good. And you look back and it was a real kind of golden time where if we played crap, it was the board's fault. And if we played well, we got a pat on the back. It was great. So it was like, sat the board because we're losing 2-0, thinking, what? And you realise as you get older, and obviously perspective is a wonderful thing, that is the case. But yeah, the horn in hand and playing pool, sounds like quite a dark time, doesn't it?
No, you seemed really happy. I just thought it was really cool to see a Forest player just at ease with themselves.
What was your technique? Did you?
I had me on cue.
Did you really?
Did you have a player A and player B though? Because I used to have. My dad bought me not a 6 foot, because the 6 foot table was a dream. We never had a big enough house.
The little pot black ones,
like 4x6 sort of thing, and. So I used to play against myself all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would, being the eldest, I'd generate little characters for myself. So player A and player B, and player A would be a certain type of player, and player B would be a certain type of player. So player B would play more safety orientated.
Wow.
Player A would be trying to smash them in, and I would,
a method pool player.
Really just
sort of bipolar pool experience.
Yeah,
bipolar.
Oh. That's why we invited him in.
Oh my word!
That'll do.
Yeah, he couldn't have come up with that.
No way.
He's going to use it as next corporate. But it goes back to what we were talking about before we came on. It's a fantastic city. Always has been, always will be, and it was just a great place to be in and around in town.
And you came back to Forest.
I did,
which was very
disaster.
And again, we had a lot of messages about the Yeovil semi-final where you got sent off.
It's, I mean, as a body of work for about 25 minutes. I mean, it's nowhere near what Queen did at Wembley, was it? It's the absolute polar opposite of that, which was just. I mean,
if you search for Queen live at Wembley on YouTube, it recommends Prutton at home.
Go from that to that.
We had a lot of messages, as you would imagine. A very, very popular Forest player. Matt Taylor on Twitter says, question for Prutz. Was there someone sat in the upper bridge for them that he didn't like? He seems to try and hit them most games.
That is cold.
That is cold. Yes, he was a neighbour of mine. No, it was something
Dennis Wise.
Yeah, it was Dennis Wise. It was something that I always tried to work on, which obviously didn't do very well. There was a portion of a game that I was quite happy with, which was getting forward and running with the ball. But I mean, Steve Wigley used to tear his hair out. We used to do it all the time. It just, it's like, what's the definition of an insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, and you know what I mean, expecting a different result. And that's exactly what it was. So yeah, I apologise to the person in the bridge for that.
James has emailed us a story here. It'd be interesting to see if you can
or validate it.
Validate it. That's right.
Is anything in it that sounds remotely dodgy?
No, not at all.
Good.
No, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Do you know?
He says, my friend and I were hanging around the main stand car park one evening in 2001. before a Rotherham game, and after waiting for a little while, we saw Sir Bobby Robson sat with his driver inside a car in the middle of the car park. After 5 minutes, we decided to go over and knock on the window, and he made a gesture to say they should go in, and both him and Bobby Robson got out of the car. He shook our hands, signed our tickets, and was so kind. They'd just beaten Man United the weekend before, and we congratulated. We asked him what he'd come to see that evening, and he said, the boy Prutton. When we informed him that David Prutton was suspended that evening and wouldn't be playing,
horror.
he looked genuinely off. He asked us, a pair of 15-year-olds, if there was anyone else he ought to look out for. Obviously, the first name we recommended he sign was Gary Jones, preferably for £20 million, but proceeded to tell him he should look at a young lad called Jermaine Genus. JJ signed for Newcastle a few months later, and the rest, as they say, is history. Who knows what might have happened had Prutz not been suspended?
Suspended, story of my life, eh?
I'd have been getting sent off for Newcastle.
Exactly. I'd have been off supporters in the northeast rather than down south. I mean, it is very much sliding doors. I think that's what you find across the board. I always think back to when I made my debut, I think in 99 against Bristol City in the League Cup. There was a lad called Kevin Doyle, not the Kevin Doyle striker, another Irishman, blonde Irishman called Kevin Doyle, played in midfield. And I think Paul Hart brought him in, and he'd worked with him at Leeds, and he was a midfielder, very, very good player, technically very good. He used to room next to me in the digs around the corner on Collett Road. He played in a behind closed doors game at Chef Wednesday, and got a double compound fracture of his tib and fib.
Oh my
absolutely
God.
mangled his leg.
No.
So we went to see him in hospital, and ended up with some horrendous looking shark bite type thing. But I might have got the time frame here slightly different. A week later, that Bristol City game was there.
Yeah.
So, and there was injuries and suspensions.
Wow.
So I played.
That got you in.
And then it's a timing thing. And I might have spent 10 years at Forest. I might have been in a position where you get a lot of games under your belt and never really moved on, never really seen much of anywhere else. But then not experienced Premier League football, which, having been fortunate to do the work that I do now, and seeing where it goes around the world, having the opportunities to do it because of your Premier League experience, no matter whether it's 150 games or 70 games or whatever, you've set foot in an arena that around the world is kind of universally seen as one of the best. Yeah, and regardless of what era it was, but it still falls under that bracket, and it might have happened at Forest, it might not have done.
Got a great email here from a guy called Will. He said, I'd like to share a personal funny story from when I got married 2 years ago. It was to a fellow Reds fan, which I was aware of, although what I didn't realise was that she was mainly a David Prutton fan. The father of the bride's speech enlightened us as to how my new wife, and no going back at that point, used to have a life-size cardboard cutout of David Prutton in her bedroom.
Who hasn't?
Throughout her teens, and it eventually ended up under the bed. The story went down fantastically well, and she was more than suitably embarrassed. So if you get the chance to give a shout-out to Melissa, David's #1 fan, that would be great. Do you have a message from Melissa, David?
Can I have my cardboard cutout back? That's superb. I remember, actually, I do remember that cardboard cutout because, and it reminds me of being around here. So there was a tanning shop down the bottom end of the Lace Market. I thought, I'll go in there, you know what I mean, get a quick 5 minutes, sort the skin out. Subsequently, that's why I look about 45 now. But I was going in there for a couple of weeks, and then the woman, who was a lovely woman behind would give you a little foil eye bits and your little token to get your 4 minutes in. And then I walked in, she went, "You're famous." And I went, "What?" And she went, "I've seen a big cardboard cutout of you." And I went, "Where?" Somewhere in like Nisa. So we're going for the high-end retail outlets here. And then she said, "You look different in your kit." And I said, "This is getting a bit weird now. Can you stop talking?" So I know exactly what Melissa's cardboard cutout looked like. My pleasure. Hopefully it got the wedding off on the right foot.
Now, we always end by doing the sort of questions that you used to probably get asked as a player in match day programmes and magazines, the sort of fact file things. So what's your favourite film?
There's always that tendency, isn't there, to go, shall I go needlessly highbrow to make it sound like I know what I'm talking about?
Well, I went for Rocky 4.
Really? What was the last Rocky where, this isn't my favourite film, but there's a speech he gives to his lad about something. For some reason, when you get stuck in a YouTube wormhole, I was watching it after logging on to look at something about Oasis, and 3 hours later, kids are at school in the playground sobbing because no one's picked them up.
Somebody can tweet in a nice link from...
Is it from Creed, or did we from Rocky Balboa? Or?
Rocky Balboa. Something about where it's great.
When he's fighting Mason the Lion Dixon.
There you go. That's your
Never heard of
favourite
it, mate.
film.
Yeah, I don't watch this sort of
It's not that anyway.
Mate,
That's
mate,
a tangent.
probably
It was a nice little line in it.
So what would the highbrow choice be?
The highbrow choice would be something like Godfather Part 2, which I
Okay.
thoroughly enjoyed.
Excellent film.
Big fan of all the Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
Leaving Las Vegas, another slightly
great.
horrendously depressing highbrow film. I'm trying to think what recently would.
Did you like the new Blade Runner?
I did.
Yeah, I did actually.
Fantastic.
I only watched it the other day.
Really good.
It was very beautifully shot, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, Walk the Line, I think, is a great
Oh,
biopic.
amazing. Great impression of... And him and Witherspoon do all
Very
their
good.
own...
Great chemistry
Sing
as well.
all their own... as June Carter Cash.
She's superb.
So good. And he got the little head tick thing that Cash has
He
got.
did. And the
Johnny
darkness
Cash,
within the
right?
man. Yes.
Anyway. Biggest fear?
That's a very good question. I
Meant to be
absolutely hate baked beans.
Why do you hate baked beans?
The texture, the smell,
What?
even to the point where when my kids ask for them for tea, to cut it up. And obviously the taste, utterly horrendous.
The taste
That's
amazing.
The disgusting for it.
Heavenly.
Horrible.
I really like it.
Heavenly.
Really are.
So what's your favourite food?
Proper, nicely done sushi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Where you from? Hull?
Yeah. Fresh fish off the dockside there. Yeah. Who doesn't like a trout roll?
Favourite drink?
I like non-alcoholic. I like coffee, and that's pretty much it. Alcoholic, I like Pinot Noir,
Oh, nice.
beer, and alcohol.
All of it.
This week I had some port.
What do you think?
First time in ages.
Have you ever had port and Guinness?
Ah, now what's that? That's got a particular name, hasn't
It's
it?
it has
Not
got
a black
particular
velvet.
name.
That's
I think
cider,
it's. No, it's
cider and
not.
Guinness.
It's nice
It's
though.
absolute port is. It's like dessert wine,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, I can't get that. I don't like dessert wine either.
Don't you?
No.
I started getting into it this summer. I love it because you've got a pudding and then you've got like a liquid pudding to go with it, haven't you?
Liquid pudding. I mean, that's exactly what's wrong with it.
Now we've got some other questions here that are from a match day programme that have previously been put to Paul McGregor.
Oh no!
So I'm going to put them to you both and see if your answers match the answers that you gave in 1995.
So embarrassing.
1995.
I'm guessing it's 94,
Hey, no need for
95
that.
from the kid.
Sorry, Mac. I just shout it. 1995.
If you're marooned on a desert island, which 3 possessions would you like to have with you? I'll put it to David first.
I'd like some semblance of music that I could listen to.
Okay.
That's all you need, isn't it? You got the sun.
Yeah.
And a fridge of beer. I'll see you there.
There you go.
Okay.
That'll do.
Can you remember what your answers were?
Oh god.
It's close.
Can we have a guess? I'm going guitar.
No.
Really?
I can't play the guitar.
Bongos.
I can imagine you playing the bongos.
I could make some bongos.
It's really
Quite
loose-fitting
handy.
linen trousers. Oh, I can see.
Loose-fitting linen trousers.
Yeah, like on a beach. That's one of those cool, like, shaman
Okay.
types. Spiritualised. You said your stereo and CDs,
Well, there you go.
which is music. Your TV and videos.
I'm going to change that to Spotify and,
Yeah.
and
Okay,
some
modern
speakers.
incarnations, yeah. And you said your girlfriend, Sarah.
I think my wife would be a little bit upset with that now.
Okay. Favourite book read in the last 12 months and why? So you've got to remember what you'd said in 1994, 95.
Book read in 94, 95. I mean, this was pre
Pre-philosophy. Pre the Renaissance.
This is before I'd become a Kant.
Yeah. Very similar.
Yeah. Oh, no. What will I have read? It'd have been some rock biography or something.
No. It was turned into a major film. It's probably still one of your favourite books, right? Oddly, the
50
second...
Shades of Grey.
It was the second word. It's 2 words. The second word is the nickname of a Forest legend.
Oh, American Psycho.
Yeah.
It's a great book. Yeah, Bret Easton Ellis.
You said it's the only book I've read in the last 12 months. I prefer reading magazines.
Well, yeah, I was into
That
magazines
changed,
at the
as we
time.
know.
Yeah.
Best book you've read in the last 12 months, Dave?
It was Sapiens. And it's kind of, tracing back everything from the year dot, socially, economically,
Wow.
spiritually. It's great. You just come off the other end thinking, brilliant, nothing actually really matters, does it?
Well, that's quite a nice... I mean, it's good to have that thought in a positive way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than in a reckless
I didn't
way
just
where
walk off into
none
the
of this
sea
matters.
once I'd read it. Just floated off.
And the final question, and I'll put it to you first this time, Paul. What do you think you'd have been if not a professional footballer?
I can remember the answer that I gave because our good friend Matt Appleby texted me that very piece. So I knew what I'd have been at the time. I'd have been a student.
That's very true.
If I hadn't have gone into football at the time, I'd have gone into music. I'd have been in a band as much as I possibly could have.
David, had you not been a footballer, what would you have done?
I think I'd have probably gone to uni as well.
What would you have studied?
Good question. I really enjoyed school. I really liked languages.
Nice.
I wasn't particularly good with numbers. I liked English as well. Maybe Spanish literature, which would have obviously been really useful after 3 years with about 50 grand's worth of
So
debt.
homeless then?
Yeah, pretty much. I'd have been
Multilingual.
wandering around the Ramblas asking people for handouts.
David, it's been a true honour. It's well done on everything you've done, not just in
Appreciate
football,
that.
but as a broadcaster as well. It's great for Forest fans to
Thank you very
be
much.
able to see you on telly. And hopefully we can have you back one day.
Fingers crossed, loved it.
Cheers,
Nice one,
mate.
Bruce.